We are the Coalition, loud and proud, outrage porn-free, civilly disobedient media broadcasting live on the worldwide Coalition Media Network here at the GoLocalLive Broadcast Center, deep in the heart of the city we love, Providence, Rhode Island, the Renaissance City, the city of, 300 or so thousand stories, the Naked City. Facebook.com/The Coalition Radio, on the mighty Twitter at Coalition_radio, and of course the mothership at coalitionradio.us. We put up links on the Facebook this week, and we'll put up some links on the website tomorrow. You'll be able to access this and all of our recent sites visits, whether it be from our days as an AM radio station or even now as we've gone digital on GoLocalProv, on Spotify. Hopefully the next step is we'll get up onto iTunes, but we're on Spotify, Spreaker, and iHeartRadio. So it is with great pleasure that I introduce someone who's been on the show before, but after a few months on the campaign trail, I look forward to her updating. Of course, I'm talking about Kimberly Ruff. She is a candidate for the presidency of the United States under the Libertarian Party, America's third largest political party. Full disclosure, if you're watching this show for the first time, I am the chairman of the Rhode Island Libertarian Party. Libertarian Party has been in business, going on 40 plus years or so. We are the party of individualism, the rugged spirit of American individualism. We believe in self-ownership, believe in peace, and we always, as the saying goes, we believe that taxation is theft. We believe that taxation is very simply the use of coercion, force, and power to separate us from our own personal assets, to engage in behavior that we simply will not support. To become a member of the Libertarian Party, you actually take an oath that you will avoid the use of coercion, force, and engage in behavior that relies upon that. We've spent the last few months in what we call the Libertarian Hour now at 8 o'clock on this show, interviewing a number of libertarians. From the radical perspective, we've had virtually the entire campaign staff of the Ruff campaign on, but we've kind of come full circle now. There's approximately a year left, incredibly enough, to the Libertarian National Convention. Our convention occurs every 2 years. Our candidates for the presidency and the vice presidency currently are voted for separately by successive ballots by members who are also delegates to the National Convention. We have no superdelegates. The delegates to the National Convention represent the grassroots of the party. Now, in 2016, the Johnson-Weld ticket took in just slightly under 5 million votes, and we qualified for the ballot in all 50 states. The first such effort to do so since, the now late Ross Perot. And we believe we've had a significant impact on the conversation that's taking place around the nation. The party is at something of a crossroads. In the past 2 or 3 presidential elections, we've taken on some very noble people who came from really other party traditions. And a movement exists in the Libertarian Party now to nominate our own. Because quite frankly, we believe that they're the best representation of our philosophy, our spirit, our belief system. And no one is a better representative than our guest tonight, of course, Kim Ruff, candidate for the president. Kim, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Pat. It's nice to see you again.
Absolutely. So you're just off of, in the Libertarian, what we call the convention circuit. Now, conventions are held at every state party across the nation, typically every year, right around this time. And from, say, mid-spring into early summer, party officials are elected, platforms are discussed somewhat heatedly, and in the run-up to the presidential election begins really the hardcore candidacy. A lot of time is spent, obviously, as I mentioned, with party members because we're going to want to be the ones that ultimately select our candidate. So I guess my first question is, you and your team have sort of crisscrossed the nation. You've done a bunch of conventions. What's your impression that libertarians are looking for, in the run-up to 2020?
Well, that's a very good question. I think that based on the reception that we've received, in addition to the experiences that we've had, which have been overwhelmingly positive, I think a lot of people are of the same mind within the movement and the party that we need to make sure that we're very clear about what it is that we believe. So they are very much wanting to have a legitimately libertarian candidate. There are wonderful people who are current office holders who are close to some extent and are good at getting their foot in the door on these ideas, but they're not 100% there. There's so much that's encompassed in our philosophy. So that we really want to have someone represent that and make sure that we set that national agenda and that national dialogue. And then we can build off of that at a local or state level. So it's been really a positive experience. And it seems like a lot of people are of the same mind.
Right. There is a very strong movement in the party nationally to really focus in some cases almost exclusively on local election. But the presidential election is critical for a couple of reasons. First of all, we'd all like to think that sometime in the near future we will elect a libertarian as a president. But equally important is it provides us the bully pulpit that we need to provide folks with a real insight into what we think, what we focus on, our issues, our platform. Equally important is, of course, the bogeyman for any independent party. And, of course, we're talking about ballot access. You know, in the absence of, significant reform at the congressional level, ballot access continues to be a challenge almost everywhere. And in some cases, we're actually fighting a war of attrition because given our successes in 2016, our relative successes, there are states like Ohio that are openly antagonistic to having folks have the opportunity to support not just a libertarian, but literally any third-party candidate. Would you go so far, Kim, as to describe this as an active attempt to disenfranchise the American voter?
Oh, absolutely, I do. In fact, I think the voting structure that we currently have, where it's an either or, as opposed to something that would be more authentic and honest, like ranked choice voting, is another example of how we disenfranchise the voice of the American voter. That's why you get into a situation like 2016, because, statistically speaking, voters will come out more likely for national elections or federal elections than they will for state or local, even though local is where the most change is affected. But in 2016, a major national presidential race, 46% of voters just didn't even bother. And it's because they felt they had no voice and no viable option. Instituting something like ranked choice voting on a national level would permit them to pick, I like this person best, and then this is my choice after that. And then on a local or state level, if they stopped employing either particularly difficult restraints or rules or regulations governing who can get on a ballot and to what extent or how, then they would allow greater choices for the voter and more people would be inclined to vote. So yes, I do think it's an excellent example of how this desire to silence people and to ensure that there's a consolidation of control is achieved. And ballot access is definitely one of them.
We truly have them scared, don't we? I mean, is there any other way to put it?
Oh, I think you're absolutely right. If you actually look at situations like even Arizona is a really good example. We had a gentleman run for office, and I believe it was in 2012. He's now since passed, but his name was Pal Gamble. And Pal had gotten up running for office next to a Republican and a Democrat, and he said, don't vote. Don't vote. These people don't represent your interests. They're not on your side. All they want is more power and control. And a surprising number of people voted for Powell. And because Powell was able to get up on stage and say the truth to completely unvarnished, and he got people to support him, they changed the ballot access requirements in Arizona in the next legislative session to ensure it was that much more difficult for us to gather the signatures necessary to be on the ballot. So yes, we do scare them because people are on our side. Any person you've ever spoken to about our message, to a man, can at least say, yeah, I see that about one or two or three or four aspects of what you're talking about. They may not be all bought in because it requires a lot of thought and evolution in thinking to get from pro-government to government is not good at all and not even maybe necessary. But there are things where they see it and they're like, yeah, you're right. That is how it is fraudulent, or that is how it's forced, and that's wrong, and that negatively impacts us. So the people are there. They just need the words, and they just need the encouragement to put those words to voice and put those ideas to action. And that's why the Republicans and Democrats want to stop us, because we have the people.
In a level of hypocrisy that, even to a hardened cynic like myself, is truly astonishing. This past 2 or 3 weeks, we've been treated to the Democratic presidential debates. And in some cases, we're talking about 12 or 13 individuals on the podium. Now, personally, I celebrate that. I think that's a wonderful exercise in democracy. That A, these people are willing to run for office, and B, they're, and you know as well as anyone what an extension that is, an intrusion into your life. To me, it's one of the ultimate forms of patriotism to run for high office, whether it be a school board, a water board, or the presidency of the United States. But you and I know that the standing headline come next, well, say September and October of 2020 is going to be, well, we can't have a third-party candidate on the national presidential debates. That would diffuse the message and not give the quote-unquote real players an opportunity to really focus on the issues. How disgusting is that?
Yeah, it's funny that you say that, because it is one of those things where you're like, notwithstanding the extraordinary irony or hypocrisy inherent in them having 2 nights of debates with this, rotating cast of this cast of thousands for the Democratic Party, you also have them saying, no, we only need 1 or 2 people on stage to really have a dialogue. But all they're doing is they're eliminating the diversity of thought. Mm-hmm. At the very minimum, they're preventing us from having an overarching dialogue about stuff. It's always a matter of, should we raise taxes or should we lower taxes? And never a question of, is that even ethical for us to do in the first place? We should have every single major candidate nominated by their party to be able to be on stage and have that conversation, including totally radical, extreme ideas. They should be put out there to have a dialogue. People need to be able to make the choice of what they believe and what is true.
Now, and what's interesting, in recent years, you've had a single party control all 3 branches of government, effectively. They've gone on to declare wars, raise taxes, create a level of deficit spending, expand government into places heretofore never seen, create, by our foreign policy, humanitarian disasters. And then you've also had the Democrats. So this one size fits all, because Kim, let's put to death one issue right now. Is there any difference beyond rhetoric between the Republican and Democratic Party here in the year 2019?
Not with the exception of maybe the windmills they choose to tilt at. No, there is no fundamental difference between them. They pick a certain issue, and that might be different, but you're right. That's just a matter of semantics or rhetoric. The net result is the same, which is more government in every single aspect of your life, less economic opportunity, and more restrictions in how you live your life.
Unfailingly, the entire reason for each other's existence at this point is an exercise in moral relativism. It would appear to me that the entire reason for supporting the Republican Party is that they're not the Democrats. And the Democrats, conversely, would argue that they're not Donald Trump. Have you ever seen the Jerry Seinfeld skit, Rooting for Laundry? I mean, are we just rooting for laundry at this point?
It does feel like the political equivalent of Pascal's wager. Like, you're not even sure if you believe in it, but you're going to do it anyway just to cover yourself. Mm-hmm. Like, that's where we are. And that is such a false dichotomy, because it ignores the fact that there's a whole menu of ideas and ideologies and belief systems that translate into meaningful action for us to choose from, truly. And if we chose to instead look beyond the 2 that we're given and find out what those other options are, then we will inevitably find someone who does indeed represent us.
Mm-hmm. If you're just joining us right now, Kim Ruff, Libertarian Party candidate for the presidency of the United States, is joining us live. We've just been talking briefly about some snapshots and reflections on the national scene now that we're well into the campaign, with just a year to go, if you will, roughly, with the Libertarian National Convention, and then the onset of the final stages of the 2020 presidential election. So let's talk about your reach out, your effort. Your campaign now has boots on the ground, well, just about everywhere, don't they?
They do.
I mean,
sometimes I go to places and I'm like, hi, nice to meet you. And then I'm like, oh my God, you work for me.
so what's been remarkable, and obviously I'm a homer, I'm a fanboy. So I'm looking at this and I'm seeing a campaign structure in place that, quite frankly, is superior to the campaign structure in place in the year 2016. What potential impact does that have? And as importantly, I want you to address, if you will, kind of an uncomfortable issue. And that's the notion that somehow, because someone isn't well known enough, or is someone new perhaps to the national picture, despite years of volunteering and years of being integral to both the Libertarian Party and the Libertarian Party Radical Caucus, how important is the structure, and as a result, how important is it that Libertarians get involved now while we've got time to support a Libertarian candidate?
That's a very good question. I think infrastructure and hierarchy are actually very, very essential in order to make an organization work well. And that is one of the things that is very excellent about my campaign, is that not only is it a sort of a groundswell and a grassroots-based thing, but we have incredibly talented people that we've put in place, volunteers, all of us, who are responsible for managing their particular department and the individuals within, and keeping the overall mission focused on what needs to be accomplished. So it's this beautiful organic thing that has come together because of just the sheer will and capabilities of the people on our team. And that's awesome. Talking about name recognition, I said this recently when in Massachusetts. If name recognition is important to you, and it is important because it's part of our brand, not just as a campaign, but as representatives of the Libertarian Party and representatives of the liberty movement at large, then it's imperative that you take an active role getting that name out. The people on my campaign who do things even as simple as tag my name or tag our campaign page on Facebook to someone else are responsible for building that brand and responsible for creating that name recognition. Podcasts like yourself that have had us on, whether it's me or John or a member of our staff, and we've talked about this campaign, have been responsible for building that name recognition. And as we keep reaching out to more people and they keep talking to their 3 friends and their three friends keep talking to their 3 friends, then we will continue to build that groundswell, because our name is but a sort of an abbreviation or a distillation of everything that we stand for in this campaign and as libertarians. Now, as far as getting involved early, this is the reality of us being a third party always, is we have to start earlier. We have to be on time. We have to have it correct. It is imperative that we are a well-oiled machine and an army, determined to win. That's so critical. So I would tell anyone who's listening now who has been on the fence but has recognized that there's something inherently wrong about the system and it's not getting any better, to reach out to their local affiliate, which is, you can go on to the, lp.org and they can direct you there, or just even Google your state and Libertarian Party and you will inevitably find a chapter that you can get involved in. And you will find an opportunity that speaks to your passion and plays to your strengths. It's time for all of us, with whatever time that we have, to stand up and push back.
And this is my opinion, hence the opinion of station management. And as I'm always very careful when I say something like this, I don't want to project this onto my guest. Damn it, it's our turn, it's our time to get off the damn keyboards and take our message to the street, because ultimately, most people, when actually given an opportunity to understand what we as an organization represent and support, find an astonishing level of agreement with just about everything on every level. And if you get folks who are rooting for laundry, well, we may have lost some of those folks permanently, but there's a whole new wide world, a generation of people who've grown up at a time unique in American history when they've reached adulthood and never lived without a war. We have an entire generation now grown up for the first time who've lived and been surrounded by technology that in my lifetime was unimaginable. We have an entirely new generation that largely has become, I'm very proud to say this. My daughters are just like this. They might be 20-something, but they've become unconcerned with religious affiliations, sexual identities, racial issues or overtones, to the point where they see and are often confused by my generation's obsession with those issues. And in saying that, there is fertile ground to present to them ideas of individuality, liberty, self-ownership. Our opportunity here is limitless. It's simply up for us, all of us, the collective us. Hate to use that word collective with libertarians, right? But it's up to all of us to get up and take advantage of this. We have a year to go. We need to embrace the party, stop obsessing over nonsense, and just get the hell to work. And that's, I tune into the feed with the campaign sometimes, and I watch just this constant chatter all day long on a couple of different social media platforms where people are having conversations about campaign issues, and real campaign plans at 10 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and sometimes the same people are still coming back and forth at 2 or 3 in the morning. It's grassroots at its best, utilizing technology that we should all jump aboard and just forget about the sins of the past with whether they're Republican or whether Republican light or just, it's history. Get over it. But that's coming from me, not my guest. Let's talk about you. You and your team have fanned out across the nation. You were in Massachusetts. I felt badly that we somehow didn't connect. My fault, not yours. All right. So you're fanned across the country. You're talking to people all day within the movement, and because right now, and to a certain degree, the first stage of the campaigns right now is within the movement in order to get the nomination. What are the primary concerns policy-wise? What are the issues that you find and the campaign has found to be most prominent in the eyes of party activists, the type of folks who are going to take it to the streets?
That's a good question. I'm sure there are myriad issues that concern party members, but because of the fact that our campaign chooses to focus solely on those things that pertain to that role and scope of office, what we mostly talk about are matters of foreign policy and international relations, or overhauling the criminal justice system on the federal level, or getting government out of the economy. There are secondary issues that we discuss because we do have at our disposal the opportunity to use the bully pulpit of the presidency to talk about those ideas. We can talk about body autonomy, though I couldn't really do anything about it. And we can influence people. But I think it really just depends. You even know this from just your observations of the Libertarian Party and the Liberty Movement at a larger scale. People come into there because there's different issues that were important to them. So, for example, my dearest friend is a sex worker advocate. That is the thing that she cares about the most. She's not saying everything else is secondary or tertiary, but that is her thing. And so that's what she wants to talk about, that sex work is work and that it should be decriminalized and people shouldn't be punished for using their body as they so desired. And if they happen to make money off of it, even better for them, because isn't that what labor is anyway? So that, that's something that's important to her. But then there are other people who are concerned about, rights of minorities or, transgender rights or, normalizing certain concepts that had previously been pejorative but do no harm to anyone. Ending the war on drugs is something that's hugely important to people. And, of course, immigration is something that has been discussed widely during this particular cycle because it has been made the boogeyman of the past 3 years.
Now, it's interesting because we had Kristen on just a few weeks ago to talk about sex worker rights from a libertarian perspective. And there is now a working group, in addition to having the only national political party that has a pro-sex worker plank in its national platform. There is a working group in your organization to discuss and address those issues. Should when the day comes that we've got a rough presidency. So to your credit on that, it's interesting. I love your reaction to this because you talked about immigration. We had folks last week on from a small town in New Mexico, and it's funny because they all knew who Gary Johnson was. A town called Deming, New Mexico, and it's fascinating to me because what they've done in the light of the immigration crisis I think is, well, what's the saying? Libertarian AF? So I'm going to give you just a quick snapshot. So these folks, it turns out that the Border Patrol, who, by the way, they have a very cooperative relationship with, when a refugee is processed and goes through the necessary paperwork to become a refugee, the government then either takes him to a center and or then, at some point, drops him off literally at a bus station. One evening, my guest got a phone call in the middle of the night to find out at a cold New Mexico night, because desert gets is a pretty tricky place for the human to operate in, that there were 38 individuals sitting at a bus station trying to figure out a way to get out of town. Now, choice A, call Fox News and find incredibly hurtful things to say about these people and point out that they are clearly inadequate to be Americans and should, as the saying now goes, send them home. Point B, recognize the humanity and these folks. Understand, to me, again, one of the great ironies this year, that we are a nation that celebrates a mother's right to do whatever that mother has to do to save the life of their child or to bring their child to a better place to live. And understand that in some cases these folks, because they are folks, walked hundreds of miles in incredibly harsh conditions and not waiting for the government to open up, took, in cooperation with the town government, took over an army, relies largely on contributions from local folks, whether it be some tax money that was pushed over, or in the case, contributions from around the country, and have created an environment that's warm and caring, welcomes these folks, celebrates their existence, gives them hot showers, gives them a form of communicating to the families that are quote unquote sponsoring them, provides them with food, water, shelter, and then for their journey gives them a pack of basic supplies so that they can journey forward. Now, which one would the Libertarian choose? And your reflection, if you will, when you hear something like that, on what the Libertarian response to this horrific immigration system is.
Well, the Libertarian response would be to do the ethical thing and help. People are people regardless, and you should not use the existence of imaginary political boundaries as a reason to deny the inherent humanity of people. So that would be the Libertarian response.
Why is that so difficult, do you think, philosophically? Are people that afraid?
I don't know that it actually is something that is difficult philosophically. I think what the problem is that we have seen this throughout different epochs and periods of time in our own nation. Because we go through this period where we have an ever-rotating cast of the undesirable other. You know, at some point in time throughout American history, it's been Native Americans, it's been the Chinese, it's been Italian immigrants, it's been Irish, it's been African Americans. I mean, we have this ever-rotating cast of the undesirable other. After 9/11, it was Muslims. Now it's immigrants. It changes depending on the weather and the political landscape. But the central core of it is the dehumanization and the vilification of individuals. And that's something that we as libertarians have to constantly point out is this person or this group or whatever is not responsible for creating the situation that you find so totally unacceptable. In the case of immigration, all of the arguments made about why we shouldn't and why we have this quote unquote crisis is because of constant government meddling, policy, rules, and regulations that prevent people from coming to this country naturally. Every argument ever made is because we don't like the net result of the war on drugs, for example. Or we don't like the fact that illegal firearms are coming across the border. Well, that's because we have an assault on the Second Amendment. That's government. That's not people. And the minute we recognize that it's people together with a populist mandate, wearing funny hats and doing it with authority, that are causing the greatest amount of harm to our lives, rather than people who simply want to live their lives just like we do, we will be better off. We will have recognized rightly the issue and the enemy, and will be able to direct our feelings and frustration in an intelligent way, a constructive way that benefits all of us.
Should action to birth, and what I mean by that is where you happen to arrive, ever be a determinant to your ability to live a life of fulfillment and liberty?
No, I don't think so. I don't think that. I mean, we say as libertarians, we're the advocate for the world's smallest minority, which is the individual.
Right.
And that means that we eschew all of those other subgroups or categories or labels that are applied to people. Like, for example, in my case, I'm mid-30s, mother, a white woman, I work in manufacturing. All these things are aspects of who I am, but they're not the sum total of my person. And because we recognize as libertarians that the individual is unique and they have their own special needs, wants, and desires, and they have a different plan for maybe how they wish to live their lives, and the only way to truly honor their individuality is to let them have that room to grow, that is really what it's at the core.
In the last few minutes, you have unabashedly, in a highly articulate manner, addressed in a very forthcoming way issues that would be typically considered the third rail of American politics. You talked about the war on drugs, we talked about immigration issues. By no means are these, as they would say, settled case law in the American culture. Is that what's been missing, do you think, from national politics as it's been played by libertarians? That sort of, here we are, this is what we stand for, accept us?
I think so. I think for a long time, because of the fact that it is a political party and political parties exist in order to get that message out, educate at large, as well as help ensure that candidates are successful and indeed do get elected to office, because we've been coming at this and we've been wanting to compete on a national level or a local level against these existing entrenched parties, we have tried to play it their way. We've tried to pattern our speech similar to theirs or use the same sort of language, knowing that all words have a denotative and a connotative meaning. We've tried to mirror their physical, their nonverbals, or run a campaign in the same way. But what makes us so distinctly unique and so truly wonderful and completely puts us in a league way above our competition is the fact that we have truth. We have truth, and our message is one that is born from not a desire to rule others, but rather a desire to simply rule ourselves. And because we're coming from this superior, noble, ethical place, it's something that we just need to own. We need to stop acting like we're the ugly girl at prom and begging other people to take us, and instead realize that we are the queen or the king of prom because what we have is flawless. And walk in there like we own the place and let them scatter in fear. That is, I think, what it is.
Don't apologize. Let's accentuate. Let's brag about it. A very quick Reader's Digest version of the story. My wife has been involved for most of her teaching career with single-sex, same-sex, K to 12 schools, all in all girls' school to be exact. When she started working there, attendance was way down, and there was constant chatter about the need to merge with an all-boys school or merge with another co-ed school. A woman came on who took over the reins, if you will. And a CEO or a president or a organizer or a party chairman's job is to really look topside and to steer the organization, if you will, into shaping a message. So this woman decided, you know what? I'm not going to apologize about being all girls. I'm going to make the announcement loud and clear that we're not going to merge. We're not going to co-ed. And in fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to shout to the heavens, trumpets blaring, the advantages of a same-sex education. Why, if you have a young woman who you are concerned with and becoming an independent person, and all the positive attributes of a same-sex education, if you will, for young women. I'm gonna brag about that. She put up billboards, and said, "This is why you should send your daughter to an all-girls school." Attendance blew up. It's a lesson I've taken with me for the 20-plus years since it happened. Accept what you are. Find a great way to externalize that. Find a great way to articulate a clear message to that. And then just let it go. People will join us. I'm convinced of that. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, no, I love it because this is like salesman 101,
Right.
which is the best salespeople are people who legitimately believe in their product. If you don't believe in what you're selling, you will never convince anyone to buy it.
Right.
Whether you wrote a beautiful book, but you can't tell people how beautiful it is, or you carry an idea, but you're too afraid to articulate it, or you made a product, but you're too scared to share what makes it so wonderful. Like, you have to be an advocate for yourself. And as activists within this movement, we've already put ourselves in positions of being quote unquote activists or advocates. So let's be advocates. Be loud and proud of who we are. That doesn't mean bully other people who don't believe the same as we do. Set the standard and say, come into my house. Let me tell you what it's like. And I will walk with you on this journey just as somebody did for me. And we will get there.
We've got a handful of issues that are, for lack of a better term, blowing up around the world. Presidential issues. So I'm going to go through a kind of a 5-minute lightning round with you. I'm going to throw a couple of situations and just, what does Kim Ruff think about it? What's the libertarian perspective? How would you address them?
Okay.
We've addressed immigration, but let's fine tune it. We've got these centers at the border, which are, I mean, just shame. Pure. We find ourselves arguing as a nation about the rhetoric and taking offense at the rhetoric as opposed to taking offense at the situation in itself that spawned the rhetoric. You become the president of the United States. You're faced with this situation at the border. Concrete terms, what do you do?
Well, one of the things that's nice about running for the presidential position or being in that particular office is that as a person who is the figurehead and the top of the executive branch, you handle all the enforcement of existing legislation. So even though I have no way to legislate anything or propose the reversal of legislation, though I can certainly suggest it, I do have the ability to determine whether or not I want to enforce and to what extent I wish to enforce federal legislation. So there is that aspect there. But the biggest thing as far as that, the concern with the folks that are stuck in these camps or these internment camps as they are waiting for some decision to be made about their lives, it comes down to them being effectively political pawns. They are stuck between this concept that there is a quote unquote crisis of immigration, which doesn't actually exist, but it sure sounds scary enough to get people to galvanize. So they're stuck with that. And then you have all these low-rung agents of immigration and customs enforcement who are just carrying out orders and don't know what to do with these people. They can't send them, send them back to their country. They're not going to let them stay here. So they're stuck in limbo. So we need to absolutely get in there with, figuratively speaking, with a machete and start hacking at it. I mean, this is systemic and endemic of the problem with government legislation. That because of government trying to intervene on this issue and creating all these cockamamie laws regarding immigration, you now have a situation where you have all these families broken up and stuck in internment camps in perpetuity. We need to do something about that and get them somewhere. Let them go.
We've got a situation now, the bubble du jour, because I'm old enough now, I've lived through quite a few bubbles, and it's what's astonishing on a separate level is that we continue to repeat the same behavior and are shocked, if you will, that not only is there gambling going on in this house, but that these bubbles exist. The student loan crisis threatens to, quite frankly, dwarf what happened with the savings and loans crisis, what happened with, the crisis du jour. What do we do? A nation cries and looks at lonely eyes to you, Kim Ruff. What's your thoughts on the national student loan crisis?
I think it's very simple. As a person who believes in personal responsibility, I would say to everyone who has outstanding student loans, you took the loan, you need to pay it back. That's how it works. And then encourage government to get entirely out of the business of funding education in the first place.
Bernie wants us all to pay for it. How does that work on just...
Oh, well, haven't you heard about the magic pot of money? That apparently this is the thing that's like the most absurd, ridiculous aspect about people's perception of government or the way that we speak of it. We act like it's this thing that exists completely independently, like it's Valhalla or something, and that somewhere on Valhalla it has this magic ability to create money and wealth and opportunity. And government is simply an organization run by fellow human beings that we happen to either elect or appoint or hire. And all they do is take wealth from those who generate it and redistribute it. You don't create money. And knowing how the Federal Reserve works and how inflation works, you don't want them to create money, please. You're not helping. So it's just absurd. Like, always in these things, these promises the Democrats make where they talk about how they're going to give us some sort of trinket or trifle if we voted for them. Like, they have to bribe us to vote for them because their ideas are so bad. Where is that coming from? How about you just leave people alone and allow them to have more of the money they earned rightfully back instead of taking it in tax, and they will have more opportunity.
We've just got 4 or 5 minutes left, so the last one I want to throw at you, and this is actually kind of funny, all right? So we've got an executive branch that is creating tariffs, which everyone admits has created a high degree of pain for example, let's pick out soybean farmers in Iowa, who now find incredible obstacles to distributing their product, who are then being compensated in part, or at least it's been planned to be compensated in part, by a government with bailouts from money that is being borrowed from where? China. Should tariffs, should the word tariff be banned? Should there ever be a situation where we use tariffs?
No, they're antithetical to the whole concept of a free market, both domestically and internationally. So no, we should not have tariffs, just as we should have subsidies or, any other fee or expense or benefit doled out on the free market system by government. It needs to be strictly up to consumers to decide what products they want and what they're willing to pay for it.
It's pretty much that simple, isn't it? Is there any real drama? As I look back on the last 45 minutes we've spent together, your platform, and the Libertarian Party platform, but your interpretation of it is commonsensical, it's straightforward, it's unbridled, it speaks to growth, it speaks to prosperity for everyone, and it speaks to giving everyone an opportunity to enjoy liberty. And again, as I like to say, a life of self-fulfillment. Because I truly believe that capitalism is the mechanism by which the individual reaches their full human potential. So, as I look at, as a libertarian at large, your candidacy, and I see what can happen on a simple little podcast in La Prave, the Renaissance city in Rhode Island, in the space of 40 minutes, imagine, if you will, a world where the few million people who identify at some level as libertarians simply take this message and reflect and refract, if you will, within their own personal circles. Not around the world, not to Times Square on a big billboard, but simply taking this message and in your immediate circle of friends, your immediate family, your immediate work friends, in a non-threatening, non-confrontational manner, of course, just simply discussing these truths. I am convinced that we can overcome the absence of a certain congressman. I am convinced that we can overcome the absence of the latest Republican light. I remain convinced that we can, as a party, grow from a presidential campaign instead of apologize for it. So, as always, you're so stretched for time. You're a regular American who's got a regular job and a regular life, and then you've got this activism on steroids. You're running for president. Go figure. I thank you so much for joining us. If you can, in the minute or two we've got left, just tell folks how they can reach out to the campaign and how they can get active, what they can do.
Thank you, Pat. My name is Kim Ruff, and I'm seeking the Libertarian Party nomination for president in 2020. If you enjoyed what I had to say or you're curious about learning more, please feel free to reach out to us at ruffphillips2020.com. That is our website. Again, that's ruffphillips2020.com. Additionally, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, Snapchat, and various other, as well as Twitter, and various other social media platforms. Don't be afraid to reach out. And if you have any questions or you'd like us to direct you towards somebody where you can get involved either on our campaign or at a local level, we would be more than happy to assist.
Great. Kim Ruff, she's running for the presidency of the United States. She represents a clear, articulate, nonsense-free interpretation of libertarianism. And I believe gives us the opportunity to spread that message, well, quite frankly, worldwide. The entire world is watching this election, particularly given the abomination that Trump Clinton represented in 2016 and the total chaos and confusion that now has rendered what was really an American message of rugged individualism and exceptionalism into just a sheer mush. There's an opportunity for everyone in this country to get involved in this election. Damn it, let's take it. Kim, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you, Pat. I very much appreciate your time.
And that, folks, is going to wrap it up. We are the coalition, infinitely loud, infinitely proud, and as always, outrage, porn free, civilly disobedient media broadcasting live on the worldwide coalition media network here at the GoLocalLive broadcast center. As always, I have to take a moment to thank my sponsors, Air Sciences, mold remediation, biohazard cleanups around southern New England. The Yacht Club Bottling Company, boutique soda before, hell, we even knew we needed boutique soda, but the finest root beer on the planet. They've got a couple of great new flavors, including something to do with a doctor. YachtClubBottlingWorks.com. Available statewide or at their convenient location home office in Centerdale, Rhode Island. And of course, Beacon Shipping and Logistics, folks. It's coming up to that time of the year where the snowbirds are going one way, the college kids are going the other. 1-855-3-SHIP-IT, beaconshippingandlogistics.com. They'll move your automobile professionally. Use the firm that dealers nationwide use to move their automobile. You can use them here across the country. They just happen to be based in Little Warwick, Rhode Island, right down the street from, well, the Coalition Radio broadcast headquarters. Folks, we understand you have a variety of places that you can spend a Friday night, or maybe during that time now where you're listening to us on Spreaker, Spotify, good old YouTube, or on the Facebook. We're thrilled that you even spend a little bit of time with us each week. As we like to say, our hashtag is, take it personally. We'll see you soon.